Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Welcome back. So what's changed? Isn't this amazing? It's amazing. And I have to tell you something too. This entire Charlie Kirk event, okay, it really is distracting a great deal of people from other things that are happening, both nationally and internationally, that I believe are remarkably important. First of all, before I continue to expand on the whole Charlie Kirk thing, we're apparently now moving our way into Memphis, which is a good thing, because again, crime is rampant there. And isn't it interesting again that it was all the Chicago talk? We're going into Chicago, we're going into Chicago. It's not that, it's not that we aren't already there. It's not that the military isn't already doing particular things in Chicago right now. They certainly are. Of that I have no doubt. But it was a neat pump fake. You've got everybody again focusing on Chicago, and then again, what does that do? Generated all of that panic from all of those, again, Illinois politicians and Chicago politicians, all of them running to a microphone. And again, you can move these people around, excuse me, and manipulate them easier than slicing a piece of bread. It's fascinating. But even with the Charlie Kirk thing, again, same thing. You can move these people around and manipulate them. Ramp up their emotions, get them to do and say endless things. All based on what? Because someone told you something. Again, Donald Trump has a way to be able to, again, move these people around, which is, I think it's fascinating. It really is highlighting serious mental illness among these people, but that kind of behavior, again, back to the Illinois politicians, for example, that kind of behavior instantly shows that they have something to hide. It's just like when they shut down USAID. Like moths to the flame, all of the leftists ran right to the microphones in the front doors of USAID and said, "Don't shut it down. This needs to stay open." You never said bupkis about it beforehand, but now all of a sudden the doors close and you lose your mind. You've got plenty to hide then. You're hiding something. This behavior is so predictable, and it happens time and time and time again, and people still can't pick up on it. They still can't pick up on it. And then they don't dive even deeper and ask themselves, well, what is it that they're actually hiding then? This is stereotypical behavior for somebody who's trying to hide something. So again, what are you hiding? Questions require answers. They really do. So I know I'm a little all over the place right now, and I've got some show notes here, but again, this whole thing is exhausting to me. You, of course, also have, I should say this, you've got state delegates or representatives or whomever over in Israel right now, or you did over the last couple of days. Again, the timing is odd, is it not? It's almost like Israel's trying to run cover for something that they tried to do or wanted to do to Charlie Kirk, among other people. But remember, we're not the bad guys. It's Israel and the United States. It's 50 states plus Israel, blah, 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 blah. And then they get all of these, again, U.S. representatives or whoever, state delegates, mayors, governors, whatever, to go over to Israel and kiss the ring and touch the wall. Highly suspicious. So with that out of the way, and I'm not, pushing it away or dismissing it. It's all, again, very odd. It's not good. Doesn't look good. But with that aside for just a moment, deep breath. Let me get into, again, more of the Kirk phenomenon here. You're seeing a number of different people tell a number of different stories, and a lot of different storylines get out there. And it's almost like, again, no one can really settle on one particular thing. So I want you to keep this in mind as I sort of break this down, because I'm going to run through a Substack here, which, again, I felt compelled to write based on a post that a listener made in the Rumble chat there, in the comments section of Rumble, to my last episode. And thank you, by the way, for the post. It was fantastic. And the Rambo and Friends video is equally as fantastic. It's very, very interesting. And I would recommend, again, that everybody who listens to this watch that video clip. But I'll tell you right where you can find it in just a minute. But I want you to keep this in mind. Richard Nixon talked to astronauts on the moon with a rotary telephone. Now, do you believe that happened? If you believe that happened, you have a screw loose. If you know that that was fake, congratulations. Now keep going. We are lied to with a regularity that is unmeasurable because it's every single day. All of the time, we are lied to. Again, the same people that brought you COVID are the same people telling you that this happened. Same people. Now, let me go back to last Tuesday just very quickly. The reaction alone from Fox News regarding Charlie Kirk, it was instantly a memorial service. It was instantly people getting on every Fox News channel and hosts show and talking about what they remember about Charlie Kirk. The so-called quote-unquote shooter wasn't even caught yet, which means, why are you memorializing him and talking about memories of him when you haven't even caught the shooter, let alone connect dots as to what's going on with the entire event? Why is that the script? That's the script because that's what newsreaders are told to read and told to do. There are directors and producers and managers of those studios that tell those people, here's the take that we're going to have on this, run with this. Memorialize Charlie Kirk. Yes, 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 there's a shooter out there somewhere, God knows where. But whatever, that's not our focus now. Our focus is, let's memorialize him. Is that normal? Or should the focus be a manhunt? The focus should be a manhunt if they were really hunting somebody. Now go to the actual event, the actual scene itself. There are two other anomalies which are undeniable if a person, again, is thinking objectively. I put the video both on Gab and on X, and it's made the rounds. A lot of people have seen it. And of course, I put it in the war video as well. But after the shooting took place, finger quotes, you see students standing around in the background, up on the steps, again, after the event. They're just mingling. Rather interesting, isn't it? Mingling after an assassination. Is it a cocktail party now? Or is it a crime scene? Which is it? Because if it was a crime scene, do you know what happens when someone gets murdered? For real? The location instantly becomes a crime scene. Everything is evidence. Everything. There's police that show up from all over. All over. In fact, let me expand on that and just take a little off-ramp for just a minute. The Annunciation fake school shooting in Minnesota, how many cops were there? From how many agencies? The place was swarming with police officers. ATF, local, state, you name it. Highway patrol, for Christ's sake. I mean, they were all there. It's a bit strange, is it not? Not so with the Charlie Kirk thing. 6 police officers, and then just the people around Charlie. So that's odd, no? And then, like I just said, After the shooting, quote unquote, the area becomes a crime scene. What do you do with the public when they're stomping all over a crime scene? You usher them out. You get rid of them. Not so here. They were all just standing around mingling. And I'm certain that this was afterwards because the ground had trash on it where they were previously standing, where they previously ran away. But they were still there, just kind of in the background, all mingling around. There was also no caution tape. You'd think, being a crime scene and a murder taking place, there'd be some caution tape. No caution tape. No yellow tape that says police, caution, stay behind this, whatever. Nothing. Isn't that weird? Does no one find that suspicious? There's something else too. I don't expect everybody to pick up on this detail. Took me a while. Then I thought, well, that makes sense. Have you ever bled before? I mean, we all have. Different parts of our body, okay? Blood does not dry to your skin in the matter of a minute or two or three. It doesn't dry to your skin. It runs off of your skin. It dries later and becomes rather crusty. But what dries on your skin rather quickly? Dye. Red dye does. It dries very, very fast. And if you see the footage of Charlie being hauled out like a piece of meat into the side of a non-ambulance, into an SUV, his hands are dry. They're red. There's red on them, but they're bone dry. And he wasn't dripping blood either. Why? I ask these questions because, again, physiologically, as I put in the last Substack article, which is titled Sleight of Hand, and again, I'm not tooting my own horn here, I'm just saying that anatomy and physiology and again, health education have been my wheelhouse here. So I know things. I know some stuff. I'll say that. I didn't, fall off the back of a truck, but the fact is that the way that the brain operates is not only predictable, but if you know how it operates and you've learned how it operates, you can actually work your own mind better in certain situations as opposed to someone who doesn't know how the brain actually operates. In an emotional situation, and not everybody's like this, but in an emotional situation, people will become, again, overly emotional based on something that they see and or hear, or both at the same time. The moment that happens among a great deal of people, the visual aspect of what you're seeing and what you're hearing bypasses your frontal cortex, the front part of your brain. The front part of your brain is responsible for logic, reason, and critical thought. It is God's design that is separate from the emotional part of your brain, the amygdala, which is literally one of the smallest parts of your brain, requiring no thought, but nothing but a reaction of some kind. Fight or flight response exists right there. And you can get the amygdala and the frontal cortex to work together. It can be difficult for some people, but you can get it to work in tandem to critically think about fighting or flighting. What should you do in a situation XYZ? And in this entire, again, episode, you're seeing the number of men and women who do not use their frontal cortex and think critically about what is being shown to them by people they don't even know. You follow me here? It's a bad game of telephone. And I've told that story before, that when I taught school, at the very beginning I had awesome communication lessons that I would do in the classroom to prove that communication is a lifelong practice. No one has it down pat perfectly. It doesn't work that way because that's not how the brain operates. But we would play telephone. We would spend an entire period. I would do it all day long, every single period for one day. We would play telephone. And I would do it to prove to them and to show them. Of course, we defined words and I had them take notes and write things down before we played, but we would play telephone in a room again of 30 some odd students. And again, I did it to prove that it's difficult. It's difficult to even move a message from one person, the first person I tell something to the very next person sitting right behind them. So I would write down a sentence that would have maybe like 4 or 5 words tops. And then I would write it down, and then I would show the first person. And then sometimes I would whisper it in their ear, and I would say, okay, here's what it is. And the people around me, again, couldn't hear it, and we made sure of that. And then they would start to, again, whisper the message to the next person. Sometimes the message would get screwed up with the very next person, the second person who heard it. Sometimes it would get screwed up somewhere in the middle, and sometimes it'd get screwed up right at the end. And then what I would do is I would walk around the room and I would look at maybe like 8 deep, the 8th student in the class, and I would say, as it was already past the 8th student, I would say, whisper into my ear what you were told. And they would tell me, and it would be wrong. And I would just smile. Because now they're just passing the wrong message around, and they don't even know it. And they're manipulating the message too. It's getting screwed up along the way. And then there's that one jerk who purposefully messes it up. And then they end up finding out, the students do, who screwed it up. I mean, when that would happen, that would be really interesting. You talk about a sociological experiment of the crowd turning on somebody because everybody wants to get it right. But if there's a person there who wants to sabotage the message somewhere along the way, they end up, once the game is done and they realize the message is wrong, they want to go headhunting after that person. So again, communication is difficult. That's the point that I'm trying to make here. But again, falling for the same things from the same people time after time after time is a huge mistake. It's a huge error. So let me get into this Substack just very quickly. Although there's a lot here. And I think, again, I was expanding on a discussion that the Rambo and Friends guys were having, and I've listened to their show before. It's very well done. They're thoughtful dudes. In fact, I'll say this. Joe Rambo brings up a particular point, which is a point that is worth certainly mentioning again. He says that given this particular Charlie Kirk event, he says, I find myself censoring myself around people who I thought were awake, but they're not, as it turns out, because they're believing this at face value. And that's an interesting point because that's true. I sat back as all of this was happening, and I started to look to see who was going to believe this and who wasn't. And there are people, again, in my immediate sphere of individuals as well, who, again, I had pegged as being 100% awake to things like this. But this one, chaos maxed for them to a different level, and they believe it. So that's the impact and the division that can come from something like this. In particular, if it's staged. Because it's actually, again, dividing individuals who are seemingly awake to things like this. But it's also doing something else, which is terrible, is it's continuing to suppress individuals' ability to think individually, and it's encouraging them to just go back and play telephone again and slip right back into the matrix. I understand, again, that this is a difficult thought exercise for people. I mean, I get it. It's the amygdala firing in people's brains. The emotion takes over, and they don't critically examine all the anomalies with this particular case, which are over-flipping-whelming. It's overwhelming. The number of things that are not happening that should be happening if a real murder took place. So here's the video. It's on Rumble. It's on News Treason. News Treason is the name of the Rumble channel, and you can follow him on X too. Again, very thoughtful dude, very, very interesting. And again, this was sent to me specifically by a listener of the show, and they know who they are, and thank you very much for doing it. At the 1 hour, 13-minute mark of that video, these three guys go into an article that was published by Newsweek in 2021 titled Exclusive Inside the Military's Secret Undercover Army. And what he did is he took the article, and anybody can do this on these AI systems. You can take the web address of an article, toss it into an AI system, and ask it to summarize it for you in bullet points, and it will do it. Now, I read the full article, and I decided to pop it into Grok, X's AI system. And I said that very thing. Summarize this. And it did. And here are again some of the bullet points. It said the following: the main thesis that the Pentagon has built the largest undercover force in U.S. history, around 60,000 people, under a program called signature reduction, quote unquote, where operatives use false identities, domestically and abroad, raising major issues for military policies, laws, and oversight. The historical context of this: the program expanded over the last decade amid growth in secret special forces and cyber warfare, forcing thousands of spies to adopt fake online personas, tactics similar to those condemned in Russia and China. It challenges U.S. laws, Geneva Conventions, military codes, and lacks congressional review, with no hearings ever held on it. Now, why would that be the case? Because the people in Congress are evil. You can't have the criminals have oversight over something that you're trying to use to ensnare bad people. And again, let's face it, a lot of these congressmen and women are being ensnared. They're being caught. They're being trapped. They're resigning in many cases, not seeking re-election. That's highly important. There are operational details regarding this also. It includes soldiers, civilians, and contractors in uniforms or civilian roles. Even at major companies, over 130 private firms manage it, costing $90 million yearly for fake documents, disguises, and evasion technology. It involves erasing real identities online, fabricating false ones, and altering records, key for special ops, over half the force, intel specialists, and cyber units using non-attribution and misattribution tricks. Again, people are being deceived because there's a military operation going on to catch bad people. It goes on and on and on here. I'm not going to read through every aspect of this Substack. I would encourage everybody to do the same for themselves. But in conclusion, regarding, again, the article and the summary from AI, it says, program scale is secretive. A retired officer notes, quote, most people haven't even heard of signature reduction, and warns of Geneva Convention's issues if captured, plus oversight gaps. Reflects a transparent world, still in its infancy with ongoing ethical, legal, and conflict resolution risks for the military. It's so ridiculous for people in Congress that to bring it up, they would look like conspiracy theorists. they would look like the thing that they themselves criticize all of the time, which means it's fucking brilliant. It's brilliant. You're literally creating something that is so hot to touch that they don't want anything to do with it. They might know about this. Hell, Newsweek wrote an article about it, and Newsweek isn't as left-leaning as people think anymore, which also verifies, potentially, the existence of a program like this and how companies are being overtaken and certain things are getting out to the people. It's just whether or not a person wants to analyze the information, or do they just want to feel what the fake news is telling people. Again, that term, fake news. How many times has Donald Trump said it? How many times has it been ingrained in everybody's minds? And yet they fall for this. I thought it was the fake news, though. I thought you weren't supposed to believe it. I thought they were the enemy of the people. Well, someone died, so now we have to believe them. We were shown a death, quote unquote, so now we have to believe it. Here's what I did then, and this is also, again, what the Rambo and Friends guys did. I just did it, again, in a different avenue. They asked a hypothetical situation about a person in a scenario like what Charlie Kirk was in, and what Charlie Kirk, did on college campuses and, trying to wake people up and XYZ. They asked ChatGPT to create a person like that, again, based within a program like that military program. I asked the same thing, or a similar thing. I said the following: what would the benefits be from multiple angles if a military operation faked the death of an American conservative who is a Christian and influential with American youth and college-age people, and then blamed the event on Democrats or the hateful left wing in America and around the world? The answer was long and interesting. There are benefits and there are risks, as you would expect, and you're seeing all of it right now in society. The risk is people will believe it and then behave a particular way. That's the risky part. Ask the unemployed. Ask all of the individuals that have lost their jobs over this. Talk about no frontal cortex. These individuals, again, watched this event, jumped on social media, recorded themselves celebrating it, and lost their job. There's zero thinking in any of that. No thinking whatsoever. And hook, line, and sinker, they fell for it. That's the risky part. Now, there are benefits politically as well. More people lean to the right. More people are coming out of the left and going harder to the right. That's a benefit. Another benefit, of course, is that individuals are analyzing these situations more with a critical eye and taking their emotions out of it. And there's a point, by the way, that Dave, or actually it was Joe Rambo himself, openly said, is he said that the thing with AI that makes it interesting, and I'm paraphrasing him here, but it takes emotion out of the equation. It's an emotionless, logical look at things because it's a robot. It's a computer. Computers don't have emotions. They just present you information. There's no emotion behind it until you get to a human. And again, if a human is writing something or a human is saying something, then you can hear the emotion in them. But that's one of the things, again, that AI takes out of it, is it removes the amygdala, so to speak, and it relies on frontal cortex solely, which isn't always a bad thing, not in situations like this. Now, again, the risks to this, and again, there are many political benefits, so to speak. People, again, Democrats losing votes, looking insensitive if they don't bring something up, of course, exposing their own mental illness by all the things that they've said online and publicly and whatever else. losing their jobs. We've seen all of that. But there are other risks too, which again has to do with division and dividing people. And there's other risks involving it being a distracting event to where something else is happening at the exact same time that's also not good. But then again, that's warfare, is it not? I mean, deception exists in warfare. So I'm not saying again that I like the deception, but I understand it's a part of war. And if you can use the enemy's playbook against themselves, then that hampers the enemy from using their own weapon consistently the way that they would probably like. Again, the Annunciation school shooting, which I've brought up a billion times, is a perfect example. The bad guys were behind that one. Same playbook, same players, same things. Where's the caution tape? Remember, the parents were just walking in, walking out, walking in, walking out. Ho-hum, nobody's being screened. It's just the way that it is. Crisis actors, as far as the eye can see, staring into the camera while they're not crying. It was embarrassing. I think it's safe to say that the good guys can pull off a false flag a whole lot better than the left can, don't you? Again, the Kirk event. In that video showing the table after it happened, Kirk's gone, most of the people are gone, a couple other security people, I guess, are standing around. They, of course, are wearing street clothes. One guy pulls out a stool, stands up underneath the tent, and starts to disassemble a camera and take it down. They start to take down and put things away. Is that what you do in a crime scene? Or is that what you do when the play is over? Now let me revisit this, because it's relevant, and the timing is fascinating. Approximately 1 year ago, Donald Trump was quote-unquote shot. So the script goes. Now run through this thought exercise here just very quickly. If there's a military operation going on, which I have no doubt that there is, because it's too obvious at this point, which, by the way, you can get on the Q boards, operationq.pub. You can type in "enjoy the show" and hit return and watch how many posts pop up and read them. You can type in the word "movie," hit return, pop it up, read the posts. It's rather obvious what's going on. But if people don't want to look into it, well, then then there's no frontal cortex. So, sorry. But the Donald Trump event, happening approximately a year ago before the election, isn't it ironic that during that moment, it was the left who was calling it fake? It was the left that was screaming and shouting like the local nitwit who lives in my town. But again, isn't it interesting he said this, no longer a school board member, of course, staged to enrage and engage. That's what he said on Facebook, or something to that effect. So he's openly admitting or saying that this was staged, that the Trump shooting was staged by good guys to galvanize and garner support for Donald Trump and sympathy and empathy and XYZ right before the RNC convention. He's actually right. That's exactly what it was. That's exactly what it did. That was the point. And then, of course, very famously, he stands up from the ground. He yells, "Fight, fight, fight," which is a flipping Q post, and then off he goes. And again, they tell you that someone is dead, a comparatori guy, Corey Comparatori, and yet his name, his last name, is misspelled on his fire department jacket. Misspellings matter, also a Q post. I know this is difficult for some, but for those of us who have been involved in this, we can see it, and it's our job, as it even says in Q posts, to help wake people up to what is really going on. And it isn't easy, because we're out here and we still have to analyze all of this information, and it's flippin' exhausting. It's tiring for us too. But this is a helpful thing. We're trying to help people wake up to the real world that we live in, which is loaded with deception and social engineering and manipulation. Any way you want to phrase it, brainwashing. It's full-blown brainwashing. But again, go back to well, let me focus in on his name one more time. The comparatory last name was misspelled. I don't know about you, but this is the one thing that every human being, I believe, has in common. You can tell when your name is misspelled. You can always tell when someone misspells your name. Now, my first name is Sean. Okay? Not made up. It's on my birth certificate. Excuse me. My birth certificate. It's real. It's spelled S-E-A-N. Every time that someone says, "What's your name?" and they're writing it down, I say, "Sean Brooks." And then what do you think? They look at me and they say, "How do you spell that? Is it with a U, a W, or is it E-A-N?" And I say, "Well, it's S-E-A-N." But I mean, I have to do that every time when I tell somebody my name. Excuse me again. For my master's degree, when I got it in the mail, the old mail-away master's degree. When I got my master's degree, my middle name was misspelled. It was the first thing I noticed. I didn't go, "Oh wow, look at this piece of paper." I just looked at my middle name and went, "They misspelled my middle name." And maybe it was my fault because I typed it incorrectly. I don't know. Either way, it was the first thing that I noticed. So I called them and I said, "My middle name is misspelled. Can you send me another one?" They were like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And they did. It was, again, my point is that if your name is misspelled, would you allow it to be misspelled on your fireman's jacket? No, you wouldn't. It'd be the first thing you'd notice. So the misspelling of his name was a nod to us and a little hint that, hey, look, this isn't the way it went down. Not to mention, has anybody gotten to the bottom of what really happened there? Or is it out of the news cycle from a year ago, and that's the end of that? See what I mean? It's already over with. Now, here's the interesting part, too. Why would you stage that? And here's why you would do it. You would do it to ensnare the bad guy. Because if you're in charge of the NSA and you're running a military operation, do you think that they've got the communication devices all locked up on all of these people and they're paying attention to all of that communication traffic and they're looking at exactly what they want to do when they want to do it? Remember how at that Trump shooting, quote unquote, CNN was there and they weren't at any of the other events, and they weren't airing it, rather? They weren't airing the other events, is what I mean to say. They didn't in the past. But they did this one, didn't they? Why? Again, a lot of people asked that question, and a lot of people arrived at that conclusion. But take it a step further. And like a literal step, okay? Imagine a staircase in a person's brain. Some people will take a step onto a particular step, and then they just exist there. And then they look around, and then they talk down to the people that are below them and, whatever else, and talk around the people that are around them on the same step. But imagine that there are more steps. So go to the next step then. The next step is, if they have the communications of all of these people, why would you not use that situation to your advantage? If there was somebody there who really wanted to shoot at Donald Trump or shoot into the crowd and create panic, and they had the comms of all of that, why would you then not set up yourself to make it look like you were being shot and like somebody had done something that they really wanted to do, but they weren't going to get away with it because you were taking their script and flipping it on its ear? Boomerang effect. Also a Q drop. You're literally taking what they're throwing at you and throwing it right back at them. And you're catching them. Because CNN didn't get that money shot that they wanted. They didn't get the shot of Trump's head blowing off, did they? The entire photo op got used in a different way. You may recall too the video of, well, let me see here. Let me set this up. It was the video in front of the stage as Trump was being picked up and starting to yell fight, 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 and then be dragged away. You may recall that there were at least 3 photographers who were ushered over in front of the stage to start taking pictures. They were off to the left side of the stage, if you're looking at the stage. They were off to the left, but you see this guy, and he walks across, and he literally brings them over and goes, "You can stand here and take pictures." And then they started to take those photographs of Trump. It was a stage, literally and figuratively. But again, it's not being done to just manipulate people. It's being done because there are very bad people getting caught wanting to do very bad things to people. Enter Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was calling out the Jays constantly. Don't you think, or certainly toward the end there, don't you think that they had communications among themselves that somebody wanted to hurt Charlie? Of course. Not to mention, why Discord? Discord is a deep state communication apparatus and has been for quite some time because online forums are where they all go to communicate and radicalize people and also gauge the temperature of the people within said environment. Hell, the bad guys used to use PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 to communicate with one another. Instead of using email, they would literally communicate through video games. Also a Q post where this was brought to our attention. And then all of a sudden, all of that data would be snatched because the Xbox and PlayStation entire apparatus would go down, wouldn't have internet access for X amount of hours, and then it would be back online again. That happened in order to data mine, because that's what you would have to do in a military operation. You're gathering evidence. So the Charlie Kirk event, the Donald Trump shooting, you talk about information gathering. That's exactly what it is. And then privately, because they're not going to do it publicly, you sift through that information and you go backwards into all the lines of communication and who wanted to do what to whom, when, and who was involved, and money that was exchanging hands, and a number of other things. That's how you analyze the situation objectively. Or, of course, you can just believe a stranger on TV that told you something happened and, well, I saw it with my own eyes on my cell phone or on my computer, so it happened that way also. The choice is yours. Also a Q post. The end won't be for everybody. Also a Q post. People can make fun of me all they'd like, but, I connect dots, and I'm not the only one. There are a lot of us out here. In fact, that leads me now to this. Let me read some comments from some individuals, again, listening to my show and a number of other things regarding this particular event. I want to go backwards real quick to, let's see, episode 799. This is the first one that I did regarding this. Here's a few posts here. And again, thank you for commenting in the comments section. You know who you are, and I appreciate it. One individual said, again, Charlie Kirk's death is a false flag. There you go. And there's again replies. Another person said possibly, but the scenario presented is highly plausible. Antifa kid, easy shot, amateur accomplices. Also, I can't see Charlie as an important target for the government, but he riles up a lot of brainless Antifa types, but who knows? See, that's an objective take right out of the gate, as far as I'm concerned. It's so much easier to just say, you know what? I really don't know what happened. I wasn't there. I haven't sifted through the information. I can't form an opinion. That's a logical place to sit. And then you sift through the information. But that's not what a lot of people did. A lot of people didn't take this person's take, which they probably should have because now they're out of a job. But they just got highly emotional. So what makes them any different than the people on the left? That if you're right-leaning and you're highly emotional, and the people on the left are highly emotional, there's a gray area that exists, and it's a decent platform to just, stand on for a little while, and then again start to sift through the information and look at it objectively. Again, and they raise a good point too. How does this benefit the left? How does it benefit the left to kill somebody on the right who is influential? It doesn't. It's career suicide. It's political suicide. But we're watching the destruction of the old guard, also a Q post. You're watching the end of the Democrat Party, also a Q post. Now over to episode 800. Here's a couple of comments. Again, I appreciate the comments. And it's important, by the way. The comment sections are important because that's where you can start to see people, different people, hopefully real people, thinking differently, or even, again, having a constructive dialogue back and forth about things that go on. An individual said the following, and this is interesting. In haste, I signed up to attend the celebration of life services for Charlie next Sunday, the 21st, at the State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. Now I will not be attending, having thought more about it, and listening to your podcast has cemented the fact that I will not go. God only knows what kind of information gathering process will be going on there. I will drive 2.3 miles to the Turning Point headquarters after work tomorrow to check out what is going on there. I'm tempted to leave a little note saying, quote, happy witness protectioning, but I will pretend that I made a wrong turn into the wrong business area. Most of my friends believe all this bullshit. It is so embarrassing. I try to educate them over and over again, but I am jokingly called a conspiracy theorist, to which I quickly correct them. I am a person who recognizes patterns, shaking my head. Yeah. See, again, it doesn't make those individuals any different than the ones on the left because their default setting is to not think and name call. Here's another one. They said, quote, excellent analysis, Sean, the best out there. Another theory could be that Erica is or was Charlie's handler. Many people believe this about Yoko before John Lennon was killed. She would force herself into rehearsals of the band and give John really bad advice, and the others condemned. Example, posing naked with her on the White Album and for the press. After John was murdered, Yoko acted oddly, example, being overly forced on getting all of the money and dating a man a little bit too quickly. Did Yoko set it up? Being there with John at just the right time? Question mark. John gave an interview to Rolling Stone a day or two before he was killed. The programming of John was also wearing off, and he was questioning the narrative, then dead. So Erica could have been his handler and part of the setup and explanation afterwards, which would explain her fake speech and bizarre actions. I'm not saying this is correct, but it could be another theory. See, it's perfect. And this right here is an excellent thought exercise because theorizing is thinking. It's being objective and you're thinking. You're not going, it happened this way because a stranger told me. That's not thinking. That's telephone. And that game sucks. They went on. They said, one thing's for certain, a skinny white guy from Utah with a trans roommate, right? Wouldn't have a valid reason for doing this, and the ability to shoot Charlie from hundreds of feet away, right on the neck, that is ridiculous. I doubt the positioning of the individual who was on that roof, by the way. And again, no one's answering nor asking the question, how did they get up there with a gun? There are even people who again believe that they've again looked at the film of him shimmying down the building after the fact, and they're saying that he wasn't carrying a gun. But if you look at his hands, not his legs, not his backpack, which is clearly still around his back, but if you pay attention to his hands, there's clearly something wrapped in some kind of a black cloth thing, whether it be a towel, a blanket, whatever. There's clearly something there. But how did he get it up there? Again, I don't think it was assembled up there because I don't think that, again, he was a real shooter. But anyway, I digress. I'll go on here. They said one more important point. Netanyahu was the first person to announce Charlie was dead. He did this around the same time as Trump, and some believe even earlier. How did he know and why? And even more importantly, Bibi already put up a huge mural of Charlie in Tel Aviv, surrounded by angels and a halo. Ostensibly, Bibi was saying that Charlie was in heaven. However, Jews don't believe in angels or halos or even halo. They said the mural, I think, was mocking Christianity. Charlie's angels, get it? And also sending a message that Bibi is in charge. That's interesting. He will decide who lives and who dies. Sick. Well, he's a sick person. 9/11, after all, among other things, like the current state of Palestine and whatever else. But again, yeah, it's a good thought exercise. This is something that anybody can do if they're interested in thinking about what's really going on. Another person over on Rumble, they said the following here, and again, this is a valid point. They said, quote, different administration, same hoaxes and false flags. It is becoming more difficult to rationalize what good can be made of these deceptions. Trump DOJ, goes along with them, legitimizing the events in the minds of most MAGA normies. They can expose these events if they choose to. If the intention were to expose by showing, it seems the main result is to reinforce in the minds of normies the abnormal behaviors and circumstances that are observed in all of these events. And if they are not exposing the events, then they are part of it. And then they wrote Kash Patel 33 hours, quote unquote. They said, where's the momentum transfer in the bullet strike, whichever direction it comes from, unquote. Yeah. All valid points. 100%. There are risks and benefits to every move in warfare. All of the time. I would encourage people, again, to either read that Substack, the most recent one, Sleight of Hand, or you can take this scenario and objectively set it up in text format any way you'd like, toss it into an AI system, and see what it pushes back at you. And give it a read. It's interesting, because it takes emotion out of the equation. And then again, the same individual in that same Rumble comment section brought up the Rambo and Friends video, which I'll link in the description below, although it's linked in the Substack article if you're interested in checking it out. And I highly recommend that you do, because it's interesting. Now, there was also this, and again, this was something that I just caught, and I thought to myself, well, that's odd. That seems strange. Some people didn't think it was strange. But I threw it up on Great Awakening, and again, this is where you can look at the ratio of the number of likes that something gets versus the number of comments. If something is liked or agreed to 42 times in this particular post that I made, and there are only 7 comments, that means that more people agree with it than disagree. Then you look into the comments and then you analyze who agrees and who disagrees or who's asking more questions about it. Just the other day, there was this whole memorial service on Real America's Voice practically all day long, from what I understand, where people were speaking about Charlie Kirk. And at the Kennedy Center, there was apparently a memorial service taking place. Now, they're called memorial services. What they are not called are memorial shows. And in the bottom right-hand corner of the television screen, next to Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s name as he was speaking, I took a screenshot because it literally says Charlie Kirk Memorial Show. Again, ask yourself, is it called a memorial show or is it called a memorial service? Is it called a funeral show or is it just called a funeral? Is it called a wedding show or is it just called a wedding? Again, somebody would say, you're grasping at straws here. I'm just saying I find the use of the word show in this to not be accidental, because if you type in the word show into the keyboard, you get a bunch of posts saying enjoy the show. You're watching a movie. What is required in a good movie? Good actors. I'm not one to decide nor fall on a particular answer when it comes to how long this military operation's been going on. I just know that there's one going on, because there's too many weird things going on, and have been for quite some time, where a great deal of it is scripted and seems rather scripted. But it's information analysis. It's not over emotion. So let me get into the comments here. The first person, again, 11 people seem to agree with this take. They said it was billed as an episode of the Charlie Kirk Show, his podcast. So again, I don't think that justifies it one way or another. If it was billed as an episode of the Charlie Kirk Show, do you still call it a memorial show? Or is it a memorial service? One person agreed with them, of course, and said this. They just decided to type that in. Another person said, still, it does seem a little off to call it a show. Memorial podcast, quote unquote, would have been more appropriate. Another person said, great catch, as far as I was concerned, and the post that I made. Another person said, thank you for pointing this out, exclamation point. I've been back and forth for days, trying to decide on his death, real death, false flag, or faked death, false flag. With your post, I can smile and relax again. Been having panic attacks for several years going. Thank you, Jesus, and my handle over there is Ramius. But yeah, there you go. Again, if thinking about it brings people some calm, I don't think that's a bad thing either, because that's what thinking is supposed to do. Here's what another person said. They said, I am in between trying to figure out if it was really sacrificed, which makes the most sense because it is spiritual and runs so deep that it would actually have bloodshed during an eclipse month and right after, I don't even know what this means, a powerful 999 portal, weird, or was this staged? How could they pull that off? Well, what'd they do with the Trump thing? Wasn't that interesting? Again, that entire Trump shooting case is dead in the water. No one's asking any questions about that anymore, just like no one's asking any questions about this anymore, really. This is pretty much dead in the water, too. And here's why. They're controlling the whole story. They're controlling the whole narrative. There was this. Screenshots obtained by the Washington Post. This had to do with what the so-called individual, the shooter, quote unquote, openly said apparently on Discord. or wrote in some letter that the FBI obtained, according to Kash Patel, and then doesn't have anymore. But through forensic evidence that they had before it was destroyed, which doesn't make any sense, they were able to determine that these particular things were said by the so-called shooter. Quote, "Hey guys, I have bad news for you all. It was me at UVU yesterday. I'm sorry for all of this. I'm surrendering through a sheriff friend in a few moments. Thanks for all the good times and laughs. You've all been so amazing. Thank you all for everything," unquote. Does that seem natural? Or does that seem like a script that puts it to bed? As if to say, good night on this story, we got the guy, no one else is involved, don't ask any more questions. That's the end of that. They're controlling the entire thing. The commenter, however, went on, they said, or was it a blood bag like January 6th? Because remember, Ashley Babbitt was wearing a blood bag. That was fake too. But if people don't analyze the video, and they just run on emotion, they wouldn't know that. It says, some of you reading my question may think I am completely loony, but at this point, I really can't decide what's real and what's the show. I know I feel like it was real, my body doesn't feel the same, and I can't get those images out of my head. But then I ask, was that a program too? Unquote. It's designed to be confusing. So how do you unconfuse something? How do you uncomplicate something? You think about it. You analyze it. Notice again, there's a couple of things that are interesting. And again, human behavior will always give itself away, and people will always give up the real answer if you just give them enough time to talk. There was a retired cop who Fox News has had on now, basically, I'd say for the last, 2-3 weeks. This guy seemingly came out of nowhere. He first showed up on the scene at this Annunciation thing, at the Annunciation school shooting, which was, of course, not real. And that's when he found his way to Fox News. And then he was co-hosting on the 5 at 5 p.m. on Fox News. And now he gets brought in regarding this. He openly said regarding the Charlie Kirk thing that not only was it a security nightmare, and not only did it seem completely strange, he's openly stating how on earth, and he actually said this, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, I find it next to impossible that a person could be radicalized online and then just kill a person. I mean, people talk about people that they want to die online all of the time. That's a daily occurrence. But what would drive a person, again, seemingly with no connection to Charlie Kirk, to randomly show up with no help, as the story goes, take a shot from 150 yards away, a neck shot, and then again just run away and not be found for a day and a half, 2 days? He goes, it just seems that seems really hard to believe, because what would drive a person to do such a thing? The reason it's hard to believe is because it didn't happen that way. Because it is hard to believe, even for a retired cop like him. I found this interesting too. There's another comment here, which I'll read in a second, but I found this interesting too. Do you remember the guy by the name of Mike Glover? I've brought him up before, a long time ago. He has a YouTube channel, ex-military, very, very horrible legal situation that he was in, that his ex-wife was fabricating. It was awful. And I went over that entire story when it happened, because I found it to just, again, be very interesting from a legal standpoint. But even he made a 14-minute video about this shooting, and he goes, look, this is odd. He goes, this whole thing is odd. He says, now he gets this part wrong, but he mentions that he doesn't see a gun in the guy's hand as he's shimmying down the building. But he does say this, and this again is where people's experience kicks in, and they start to look at particular situations and they go, that's interesting. And then they think and they ask more questions, and you can see the wheels turning in their heads. But he goes, I've taken down and disassembled and reassembled practically every kind of gun imaginable, both foreign and domestic, he says, in the field of a battle, or outside, or wherever. Different deployments, you name it. He goes, it was one of the many things that I did. He goes, so you're trying to tell me that this guy disassembles a gun, puts it in his backpack where it won't fit, gets up on a roof somehow, reassembles the gun on a rooftop after the Trump event. I'm adding this part, after the Trump event, where rooftops are on everybody's minds. Isn't it odd no one was thinking about rooftops on this one? Strange. And then he says, and then I'm supposed to believe that he shoots around, disassembles the gun, does something with it. Of course, he doesn't think he jumped off the building with it, but he clearly jumped off the building with something in his hands that was not his backpack. And then goes into the woods, reassembles the gun with the cartridge still in the chamber, because to disassemble the gun, you have to pull the bolt all the way out, thereby ejecting the casing, the shell casing. And he goes, and so then he reassembles the gun and then puts it in a box, puts the spent cartridge back inside of the gun, and then leaves it there for someone else to come and get. He goes, none of that makes sense. And he's right. It's confusing because it doesn't make any sense. Now, what's also interesting about, again, that situation is that it's possible a shot was fired, because clearly one was. But how does anybody know that it was a live round? Just because what? Some tranny stuff was written on the casing, so we're told, in this game of telephone? Because ultimately, the one question that no one, and I mean no one, is even seeking to answer is, how did the gun get up there in the first place? I read a Chan post describing it in the last episode. Whether that's to be believed or not is anybody's guess. But in that post, it was like one person put the gun up there and left it there at a separate time in advance. Isn't that interesting? How did that person get up there then? I thought that the doors to rooftops were locked. Yes, you can get to a rooftop because in many rooftops, that's where the AC units are held for those larger buildings. But there's usually some kind of a utility door that, again, is on a rooftop, and those doors are primarily locked, or they are emergency activated to where if you open them, an alarm goes off. So how did this person get up there with a gun and not have any of that happen? But see, no one's even asking that, because when you ask that question, that leads to other people that you have to question and a number of other things. And it requires, again, even not just more people involved, but more questions that have to be asked. But people aren't doing that. They're saying Charlie Kirk's dead, this guy shot him, he was a tranny, or he was friends with trannies, turned himself in, father was a construction worker, their family friend was a sheriff, and he turned himself in, and again, everybody go to sleep because, well, that's the end of the show. Here's the last comment. They said, I feel you, friend. They said, some of the things I've seen and heard boggle the brain to the point I'm back and forth. What really got me was his wife's speech the other night. I don't care how strong you are. This would be devastating. I didn't see a devastated wife. My gut said, staged. She also spoke as if he was still alive, in my opinion, unquote. And this is from somebody, again, describing themselves as Mama CHZ1. So if it's a female saying that, isn't that interesting? Because, again, I know a great deal of females who know that, again, that was unnatural, because that's an unnatural response. Which also begs this question: has anybody else received TPUSA and Erica Kirk emails in their inbox? I have. I don't recall signing up for TPUSA emails or headlines or whatever, let alone Erica Kirk emails. Sorry. That's one of the ways, again, that they drive the message home to people. All of a sudden, your inbox is filled with those emails, and you've never gotten them in the past. I've never gotten TPUSA emails. I've never gotten Erica Kirk emails. It's weird. Regarding this issue, I'm going to leave it there for now. Again, I would just encourage people to not rely on the smallest part of their brain when things like this occur. Don't become overly emotional. You can look at it, and yes, it's an emotional situation because that's how everybody's behaving, which means, again, that could be a clue, or should be maybe, that maybe you don't need to behave that way, that there's another way to think about it. Because when everybody's thinking alike, someone's not thinking. So, I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not even saying it's for everybody. But there are lots of us out here who are doing this and have been doing this for a very long time. I was doing it in book format before this show. It's one of the reasons I don't write books anymore, is I can say more here and I can do more in a Substack article than sitting down and, again, writing a book, because we don't really live in that kind of a world anymore where a book is relevant necessarily. I mean, think about that. That's an odd one, but it's kind of true. Books are still relevant and people should read them. There are a lot of people, unfortunately, who do not. But, again, when it comes to immediate information and analyzing in real time a situation that is highly questionable, where people are unfortunately not asking questions or connecting dots or even comparing it to things that they've seen in the past that either make or don't make sense, that's disappointing. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents on it, but there you go. Okay. 2 quick, actually, more than that. This is funny. Let me let me mention this. Again, just doing my part. I sent out an email to the Columbus State Community College regarding, of course, their employment of a woman by the name of Valerie Cumming. Valerie Cumming used to be, apparently, she's an instructor there. God knows why. Let's see. What did I say here? Bachelor's in English and Gender Studies from Ohio State University and a master's in fiction writing from the University of Michigan. Again, I think I went over that in the last episode. But I zoomed in on her picture when she was running for city council, and she's wearing a coat hanger necklace. It's a literal coat hanger hanging sideways from a necklace. Think about what that means. If you said abortion, you would be correct, because these people are crazy. So, I sent all of this, of course, these Facebook screenshots, again, of Westerville City Schools can fuck all the way off. I will never teach my children to stand for a flag that is flying half-mast for a Nazi. Okay, good for you. Well, hopefully you're out of a job now. And if you're not, you should be, because if it was me saying that, I'd lose my job. So I said the following again to Columbus State Community College in an email, and I emailed a lot of people, approximately, 5, 6, 7, 8 people, including her. I said, it's evident, having visited your website, that there's no shortage of unstable employees within your campus, but this one is clearly unprofessional and you may want to move in a better direction. Which, by the way, just a little side note, if you get on their website and you go through their staff directory and you start looking at the different departments and their staff photographs, these people are crazy looking. It's basically a leftist swamp. I went on in the email and I said, for the record, one of your instructors, Valerie Cumming, is already famous for all the wrong reasons. I wonder what impact, I said, this will have on donations and enrollment, let alone credibility. Thought you should know. Have a nice day. 3 minutes later, I got a response that was also emailed back to everybody else that said, good afternoon. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We will review the information provided in your email. As a general practice, the college does not comment on the status of specific personnel matters. Sincerely, Kristen M. Treadway, Chief Human Resources Officer, Human Resources Department. You're welcome. Now cut her loose. You want to know the irony of this too? I applied there back in the day when I was applying for positions in Ohio. A position to teach educational psychology popped up at Columbus State Community College, which I believe is located in Delaware, Ohio, which at the time is where my brother lived. And I thought to myself, wow, what an opportunity. I can live closer to my brother and his wife and their kids, and that would be cool. And at the same time, I would be teaching a subject that I thoroughly enjoy at a smaller place, which of course would have less students in a smaller room, and that would be cool for me also. Never got a call back. Shocking. What goes around comes around. And speaking of that, this is from KENS, Channel 5 CBS, your trusted name in news. Texas employees face fallout over social media posts on Charlie Kirk's killing. Lawyers explain legal limits of free speech and employment. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Meanwhile, controversy is growing after several public employees were reportedly fired over social media posts they made related to Kirk's killing. Tonight, we're learning an area firefighter was terminated while a teacher is under investigation. So what are the legal limits when it comes to free speech and employment? KENS 5 reporter Mike Jimenez spoke with legal experts to find out.
Local opponents of Charlie Kirk are finding themselves in trouble after making posts about his death on social media.
And it's no surprise that some people have some extreme emotions regarding that man and some of the things that he said.
On Monday, Comal County ESD number 3 sent out a letter stating they had terminated one of their first responders after an internal investigation into a social media post. Friday, Jordanton ISD announced they were investigating a teacher's social media post about Kirk and said the matter is being addressed in accordance with district policy. The debate is playing out across the state. Last week, the Texas Education Agency sent out a letter stating they are aware of some educators who have posted or shared, quote, reprehensible or inappropriate content. They will be investigating those posts to see if there has been a violation of the educator's code of ethics.
The whole tone of the letter shows a tremendous amount of support and sympathy for Charlie Kirk, but not for anybody who might be offended reasonably by some of the comments he's made.
That raises the question, do employers have the right to fire an employee over a social media post? Attorney Lawrence Morales says it depends on if they are a public or private employer.
Private employers really aren't governed by the First Amendment. The First Amendment only restricts the activities of state actors or those acting under color of state law. So as a general rule, if a private employer wants to terminate somebody for social media posts, regardless of what the content is, they are free to do that.
However, when it comes to public employees like teachers or firefighters, the rules shift.
As public employers are governed by the First Amendment, and there would be some restrictions about terminating people for certain speech made on social media or otherwise.
Both attorneys say Texas has an at-will employment and employees can be fired at any time. But Holscher says if they have a contract, there is a process that must be followed. And adds right now is the time to give each other a little bit of tolerance of things being said during this heated time.
People are very emotional right now, and everybody needs to take a step back when asking themselves whether or not another American's opinion crossed such a line that as a government agency, we can terminate them and try to ruin their careers.
And tonight in a social media post, Governor Greg Abbott said that more than 100 educators are under investigation for their comments. Any teachers whose actions incite, or call for violence will have their teaching certification suspended. Will be ineligible to teach in Texas public schools. Micah Bettis, KINS 5.
So if you multiply that by 50, then that's, 5,000 teachers? 5,000 teachers nationwide who are being investigated for making inappropriate comments about something that they think happened? I mean, the irony is hilarious. You talk about, again, no frontal cortex. None. Zero. All emotion. Abortion hanger necklaces, ladies and gentlemen. These people are crazy. Frankly, the number seems low to me. That's just me, but it seems a little low. Let's see, there's also this. I've got one more little local thing and then a national thing to just kind of wrap up, which is, I think, a nice summary from what's been going on here recently. But this was from the Journal News, which is a tri-county newspaper in the general southwest Ohio area. It was titled, "Half of Butler County's Schools State Report Card Ratings Drop." Uh-oh. 7 of 10 districts show lower graduation rates. Which districts, you might ask? The one in the local town where I live. According to the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce, 5 of the county's 10 public school systems showed a decline in the state's 5-star ranking for the 24-25 school year. You remember, their Mario Party scoring system that they use at the state level to determine whether or not they think they're successful or not. It's ridiculous. Those districts failing, according to the 5-star measurement, were Hamilton, Fairfield, Middletown, Ross, and, you guessed it, Talawanda. None of the 10 districts improved in that category, with Lakota, Monroe, Edgewood, Madison, and New Miami repeating their previous star rating. According to the state's measurement for 4-year graduation rates, 7 of the 10 local districts saw a reduction rate for the 24-25 school year, with Middletown schools continuing its trend of recent years with the lowest percentage of graduation at 83.8%, down from 23-24 school year's rate of 85.8%. Well, there are more black students there, just trying to say. Okay. Lakota and Ross schools, it says, continued their trend in recent years and blah, blah, blah. And that's basically it. They don't specifically quote Talawanda at all, but there you have it. Again, it's a dumb system, because it's supposed to be. If it were rigorous, and if it were ethical, then it would be. But it's not designed that way. It's designed to make excuses for terrible, terrible performance. Again, they're brainwashing camps. There's no way around it. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, there is this. How many times in the last week have you been called a Nazi, a fascist, this, that, and the other? How many times is it going to take individuals to eventually be called those names and then wake up to the fact that those are being used, those are terms, of course, derogatory terms, being used, well, not fascist, that's not a derogatory term. It's actually sort of a backwards compliment, believe it or not, based on the actual definition of the word. But again, how many times have we been called that by default before it takes someone a set amount of time to actually look up the history of those words and then look at what's going on? And if someone's calling you a fascist, doesn't that mean, based on the real definition and origin of the word fascist, that the person calling you a fascist is in fact a communist? I think so. Because what's happening right now is these people are outing themselves as being card-carrying communists. That's exactly what's going on. That's what a fascist would say. Fascism is the polar opposite of communism. It's the literal opposite by definition. There's a flyer here that was sent my way by a listener of the show. It's called Emerge, #Leaders Matter Virtual Event Series. And it's titled Teachers Against Fascists, a conversation with Randy Weingarten, AFT President, and a Ashanti F. Goler, Emerge President and CEO, taking place Tuesday, September 16th at 1 p.m. Pacific Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Well, I would tune in, but I'm going to be a little busy. To hear how communists behave and love name calling. These are the people running the business. It's that simple. They're telling you they're communists because they are. And if they call you a fascist and you're not a communist, hell, just embrace it. Because it's the polar opposite of communism. And these people are everywhere. And it's amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening as always. Make sure and check out the Substack, and you're definitely going to want to watch that video that's embedded at the top of the most recent Substack. With that said, I'll catch you on Friday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.